The Young and the Restless Spoilers. In Genoa City, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation as everyone waited for Noah to wake from the coma that had put his life on hold. His family, friends, and even the doctors were hoping for a miracle, but the medical team was growing increasingly worried. The only thing left that could potentially bring him back to consciousness was a deep emotional trigger, something so powerful it could break through the veil of unconsciousness that had trapped him. Yet, there was still a sense of uncertainty that hung over his situation. It was a waiting game, one that left Nick and Sharon, Noah's parents, grappling with their helplessness. They knew that Noah's recovery wasn't just about medical science. It was about his will to live, his emotional connection to the world around him. Nick and Sharon hadn't yet found the right approach, the right catalyst to trigger Noah's recovery. They tried talking to him, holding his hand, reminding him of the love and support waiting for him. But nothing seemed to work. Despite their best efforts, Noah remained unresponsive. It was in this moment of despair that a surprising figure appeared, someone who could be the key to unlocking Noah's potential for recovery. Audra, the woman who had once been a significant part of Noah's life, entered the scene. Her arrival was unexpected, yet it was exactly what Noah needed. Audra had once been by Noah's side, sharing a deep bond with him before their relationship crumbled. Their love had seemed genuine, full of promise, until Audra betrayed him in the most hurtful way possible. She left him for Tucker. Their breakup had been messy, leaving behind not only emotional scars but also a secret. Despite everything that had transpired between them, there was a truth they both kept hidden from the world: they shared a daughter. This child, the product of their time together, was the one connection that still tied them, despite their fractured past. Audra and Noah had made a pact to keep their daughter's existence a secret, ensuring that the child wouldn't be dragged into the drama of their adult lives. But both Audra and Noah had still kept her in their hearts, caring for her, loving her, even though they had gone their separate ways. Audra, ever the complicated figure in Noah's life, had her own reasons for wanting to be involved now. She had moved on with Tucker, but the pull of her past, her daughter's connection to Noah, was something that could not be ignored. Audra believed that her daughter could be the key to Noah's recovery. She had always known that Noah's greatest desire was to have a family, a sense of belonging. Their daughter was a part of him, a piece of their shared history that could bridge the gap between his world and the present reality. She asked Nick and Sharon for permission to bring their daughter to see Noah, to try and break through his emotional barrier. Sharon, still hopeful but filled with doubt, hesitated at first. But seeing the genuine belief in Audra's eyes, she agreed. It was a long shot, but they had nothing to lose. Sharon, with her ever-present hope, silently prayed that this act of love, this small gesture, could bring Noah back to them. Nick, though hesitant, shared the same quiet wish. They wanted nothing more than to see their son wake up, to hear his voice again, to see him find his way back to them. The moment came when Audra brought their daughter into Noah's room. The little girl, no older than 5, walked with a sense of innocence and purpose, her small hand clutching Audra's fingers tightly. As they stood by Noah's bedside, Audra gently knelt down, her tears welling up as she gazed at the man she once loved. The little girl, with all the simplicity of a child, looked at her father's still form and softly whispered, "Daddy, wake up. Please wake up." The sound of the child's voice was like a jolt to the heart. It carried an unspoken plea, a pure, untainted love that cut through the years of hurt and betrayal. Audra stood silently by, her own emotions overwhelming her as she watched the little girl speak to Noah. And then, as if on cue, a subtle movement from Noah's body caught everyone off guard. His fingers twitched. The room held its breath. Could it be? Was the miracle they had all been waiting for finally happening? Noah's eyes fluttered, then opened, blinking against the light. His gaze was unfocused at first, but as the blur of his surroundings cleared, his eyes locked onto the figure by his side. It was her, his daughter. His heart swelled, and in that moment, all the pain and confusion seemed to melt away. He had woken up, not just for his family, but for the child who had always been a part of him, even if he hadn't known it. Audra, her eyes brimming with tears, rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "Noah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Nick and Sharon, standing at the doorway, exchanged stunned looks. They had hoped, prayed for this moment, but seeing it unfold before them was something they couldn't have fully prepared for. A miracle had occurred. It wasn't the grand, sweeping event they had imagined, but it was a miracle nonetheless. Noah's voice was hoarse, weak, but still recognizable. Is she really here?" he asked, his gaze flicking to their daughter, who was now standing at the foot of his bed, a look of wonder on her face. Audra nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes, Noah. She's here." The room was filled with an overwhelming sense of relief, but it was more than just the relief of a son waking up. It was the weight of past mistakes being redeemed, the fractures between Noah and Audra being healed through the love of their child. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one where the past no longer had the power to keep them apart. For Nick and Sharon, the journey was far from over. There would be questions to answer, emotional wounds to heal, and adjustments to make. But in this moment, they shared in the joy of seeing their son alive, his heart still beating with hope, and his world forever changed by the simple power of a daughter's love. They knew that Noah's recovery would be a long and difficult road, but with Audra and their daughter by his side, anything felt possible. As Noah sat up slowly, still in shock from the sudden rush of reality, he looked at the faces around him, Audra, his daughter, and his parents, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. He had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at the relationships that had shaped him. He had come back, and with that return came the promise of healing, forgiveness, and, perhaps, the chance to build something new from the wreckage of the past. But the journey was only just beginning. In Genoa City, a wave of hope washed over the town as everyone waited with bated breath for the moment they had all been praying for, Noah's awakening. For days, weeks even, Noah had been lying motionless in a hospital bed, trapped in a coma that no one could fully explain. Doctors had said it was a waiting game now. The physical injuries had healed, but the emotional wounds were another story. They all knew that it would take something monumental to reach him. Something deep, something only love could ignite. Nick and Sharon had been holding on to a shred of hope, but even they were beginning to worry that the miracle they so desperately wanted might never come. It had been a long, harrowing ordeal for them both. Sharon had spent sleepless nights by Noah's side, her heart heavy with the fear that he might never open his eyes again. Nick, ever the protector, tried to remain strong, but even his resolve was beginning to crack. They knew Noah needed more than just medical attention. He needed to be reminded of who he was, who he had been, and what he meant to the people who loved him. But how? What could they do to break through to him? That's when a familiar face, one neither of them had expected to see, entered the hospital room, and the entire dynamic shifted. Audra's return to the fold was as unexpected as it was dramatic. She had been part of Noah's life years ago, a significant part. They had shared a love that, for a time, seemed like it could last forever. But life had other plans, and after an explosive breakup, Audra left Noah behind, only to find herself in a relationship with Tucker. The wounds between them had been deep, and while time had allowed them both to move on in different directions, there was something that neither of them could escape, their shared daughter. A child that neither had spoken about publicly, a secret they'd kept from the world, but not from each other. Audra knew, deep down, that her daughter might be the key to unlocking Noah's soul. She had always known that, even through their separation, Noah's greatest love was being a father. And though they had kept their child hidden from the world, that child had always been a part of him. A part of their love. If anything could bring Noah back from the brink, it would be the presence of the one piece of him that had never gone away. Nick and Sharon were hesitant at first. They understood the complexities of Audra's relationship with Noah, but there was a desperation in her eyes that they couldn't ignore. She genuinely believed that her daughter could awaken something in Noah that nothing else could. With a mixture of hope and skepticism, Nick and Sharon agreed. After all, what else did they have to lose? If this was their shot, they had to take it. It was a long shot, but they were willing to try anything. When Audra brought their daughter into Noah's room, the atmosphere shifted. The little girl, who was no older than 5, walked in with a sense of purpose and innocence that only a child could possess. She was small, but she carried a heavy weight in her heart. A weight she likely didn't even fully understand. Her hand tightly clutched Audra's fingers, and her eyes were wide with both wonder and sadness as she stepped into the room. The moment the little girl saw her father, lying motionless in the bed, she froze for just a moment, as though her heart knew what was at stake. Then, without any hesitation, she approached Noah's bedside, her small voice trembling but filled with the purest emotion, as she whispered, "Daddy, wake up. Please wake up." Audra stood beside her, her face a mask of grief as she watched the scene unfold. She had always hoped this moment would come, but seeing it now was like a dream. A moment she had never dared to believe could be real. Tears began to slip down her face, unbidden, as she watched her daughter speak to the man who had once been her world. And then, something miraculous happened. At first, it was a subtle twitch, just a movement, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to send a ripple of shock through the room. Noah's fingers moved slightly. Everyone in the room froze. Was it possible? Could it really be happening? And then it happened again. This time, more pronounced. A deep breath, a fluttering of his eyelids. And then, his eyes slowly opened. The room went silent. Nick and Sharon, standing at the door, couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was as if time had stopped, and yet, in that instant, everything was moving faster than ever before. Audra, her voice trembling with disbelief and relief, whispered, "Noah?" Noah blinked, his eyes adjusting to the light, and then his gaze locked onto his daughter, standing at the foot of his bed. It was as though everything else in the room vanished in that moment. All the pain, all the years of separation, faded away, and all he saw was the child who had been a constant thread in his life, even when he didn't know it. His voice was hoarse, weak, but it carried a power that no one could have anticipated. Is she really here?" Noah asked, his gaze shifting between Audra and their daughter, his eyes filled with confusion and wonder. Audra nodded, her heart swelling with both joy and sorrow. "Yes, Noah. She's here. She's real." The tears began to fall freely then, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and profound love. Nick and Sharon rushed forward, unable to contain their emotions any longer. They embraced their daughter, both of them crying in each other's arms. The years of fear, worry, and loss were swept away in that single, miraculous moment. Their son was alive, awake, and the family they had longed for was being slowly put back together, piece by fragile piece. But even in this moment of joy, there was still a long road ahead. Noah wasn't speaking yet, he was still disoriented, still adjusting to the world around him. He needed time to recover, to process what had just happened. His body was weak, and his mind still fractured. But the miracle, the catalyst for his recovery, had been set in motion. As Sharon and Nick held their granddaughter, their emotions ran high, and they both gave heartfelt thanks to Audra. It had been her belief, her determination, and the love of a child that had brought Noah back to them. "Thank you, Audra," Sharon said, her voice choked with emotion. I don't know how to thank you." Audra, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment, could only smile through her tears. She had helped bring Noah back to life, but more than that, she had helped heal wounds that had festered for years. She had given him a second chance, and in doing so, had given herself one too. Noah's recovery would not be instantaneous. There would be questions, there would be healing, and there would be many difficult conversations to be had. But for now, they had their son back, and they had the gift of time. Time to rebuild, time to forgive, time to love. It was a rare gift, one that none of them would take for granted. As Noah slowly drifted back into a restful sleep, his daughter's hand still holding his, Audra stood quietly at the edge of the room. She had done what she set out to do, and now she could step back and let Noah, Nick, and Sharon begin their journey together again. The miracle had happened, and in this moment, the past seemed so far away. It was the future, full of hope and possibility, that they would now focus on. The love of a parent for a child, the bond that transcends time and hardship, had proven to be the most powerful force of all. No one could have predicted this turn of events, but in the end, it was the kind of miracle only love could create.